Hey, guess what, you guys? Jim Carrey is actually singing the song You're Me One Mr. Grinch for this movie. So, since he had a turn in singing this song, why don't we all try singing this song ourselves? Alright? Are you ready to sing along to this song? Okay, here we go. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a. Caution! The following video is an in-depth review of the movie I'm currently reviewing, which means that there will be massive spoilers in the review. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then please feel free to watch this movie first before watching this video. However, if you have already seen this movie, or you just want to know my thoughts on this movie, then keep watching. Okay, so I have a little story to tell regarding getting introduced to the Grinch. I was actually introduced to the character through the 1966 cartoon, an animated special that has a special place in my heart. So of course when I heard about a live-action adaptation being made in 2000, I was a bit curious about this movie. I was wondering to myself about how a live-action version of the Grinch would work out, and would it be as good as the original 1966 cartoon? Well, I finally got the chance to watch this live-action adaptation of the Grinch, and I was pretty surprised by how this movie came out, especially with Jim Carrey being cast as the title of Grinch. This was also a movie that I've been dying to review for years, but I never got the chance to review it until now. So before I get into my thoughts about this film, I would like to give a brief summary of this film. The film starts off with the Who's in the town of Whoville getting ready for their annual Christmas activities, such as going out shopping for gifts for their fellow Who's. However, there was one person not celebrating the holidays, and that was the Grinch himself. The Grinch was a being who lived all by himself on the mountaintop for over 53 years, and he hated Christmas and the Who's. The reason why the Grinch hated Christmas so much was because when he was a child, the other Who children would tease him because of his strange green appearance. Things only got worse when on Christmas Day, the kids were giving each other gifts, and the Grinch wanted to give his childhood crush, Martha May, a beautiful gift he made himself. But when the Grinch decided to shave off his beard to fit in with the other kids only teased him even further. This then causes the Grinch to lash out at the other kids and run away to the mountaintop where he lived for the rest of his life. One day, however, a young girl named Cindy Lou Who wanted to become friends with the Grinch, and she invited him to the annual Whoville Christmas party. At first, the Grinch was having a fun time at the celebration, but then he is quickly humiliated by the Who's, and it was then that he decided to take matters into his own hands by stealing the presents from the Who's on Christmas Day. When I first heard about Jim Carrey being cast as the Grinch, I was a bit hesitant about seeing Jim Carrey in this role. At the time, Jim Carrey was well known for his comedic roles in films such as The Mask and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And since the Grinch was a character who is often mean-spirited and sometimes a bit terrifying, I thought that Jim Carrey's comedic acting wasn't going to fit the character very well. But luckily, though, Jim Carrey's portrayal of the Grinch was pretty solid. Jim Carrey seems to be portraying a version of the Grinch who seems to take great delight in torturing the Who's, but is also sympathetic once we learn his tragic backstory. If you want to portray a character who is mean-spirited and yet sympathetic at the same time, then you need an actor or actress who could portray those aspects of the character easily. And Jim Carrey has definitely done a great job at convincing the audience that the Grinch can be rather mean, but he has a good excuse for becoming the way he is. I had actually felt sorry for the Grinch once we get to learn about his backstory and how he was bullied for his appearance as a child. No one likes to be bullied, and I can completely understand why the Grinch would want to get back at the Who's for how they treated him when he was a child. I love the fact that the movie gave the Grinch an actual backstory, since in both the original book and the 1960s cartoon, we were never given a reason why the Grinch hated Christmas and the Who's. The closest explanation we were given was that the Grinch's heart was a couple sizes too small, hence why he's so mean-spirited. It really gives more depth to the Grinch's character, as it shows that he wasn't always a bad person, kind of, until the day that he was bullied by the other kids. Jim Carrey also did a fantastic job at providing most of the comedy in this film. I don't think that this film would have been the comedy goldmine that it was if it wasn't for Jim Carrey's comedic acting throughout the film. I actually felt myself laughing at the many jokes that Jim Carrey said throughout the film, and they certainly made this portrayal of the Grinch one of the funniest portrayals I have ever seen. The jokes were very well placed in this film, and it never felt like it was being forced on us. The jokes just came by naturally, since this is a version of the Grinch who constantly uses jokes as a coping mechanism for all the bullying he suffered when he was a child. I never would have thought that Jim Carrey would make me laugh at all the Grinch's wacky shenanigans throughout the film. Even though his hijinks are a bit mean-spirited, and I usually don't like characters who are mean-spirited, but I still love the Grinch anyway because of how funny he can be. And now I want to talk about some of the Who characters themselves. Probably my most favorite Who character in this film is none other than Cindy Lou Who herself. I love the fact that this film gave Cindy Lou Who a much bigger and more important role in this film, as she was the one who was not only curious about the Grinch, but actually wanted to be friends with the Grinch once she discovers his tragic backstory. Cindy Lou Who felt more relatable to me here because she is shown as being an innocent child who is curious about the world around her as she tries to ask questions about things that she doesn't quite understand. I actually sympathize with her trying to find out about why the Grinch was considered such a bad person and why he lives in the mountains by himself. The adults in Whoville wouldn't tell exactly why the Grinch is as mean as he is, or why he lives by himself in the mountains. So of course she had to take matters into her own hands to find out about what was going on with the Grinch. Cindy Lou Who was probably the only Who character that I actually liked in this film because she didn't have the mindset of thinking that the Grinch is chaotically evil for no reason like the other Whos do. She was actually proactive enough to figure out that the Who's bias against the Grinch was based on fear and hate, and that they didn't even bother getting to know the Grinch on a deeper level. Sure, some blame could be put on the Grinch himself for being purposely antisociable against the Whos, making it difficult for anyone to connect with him. But at least Cindy Lou tried to connect with the Grinch, even if there were times when she wasn't successful at it at first. I also like the fact that Cindy Lou didn't judge the Grinch based on his appearance, as she genuinely wanted to be the Grinch's friend. The scenes between Cindy Lou and the Grinch were the most genuine parts of the movie, as we get to see these two characters bond with each other as they both seem to be outcasts of a sort to the people of Whoville. Cindy Lou was often scolded by the people of Whoville, especially the mayor, for even mentioning the Grinch's name and for daring to have the Grinch participate in their celebrations. The Grinch, meanwhile, was ostracized by the Whos for being different from them, and he ends up taking out his frustrations about being bullied when he was a child out on the Whos. I also did like Cindy Lou's family, even though they didn't get as much focus in this film as Cindy Lou does. Especially her two brothers, where I even got to the point that I forgot that they even existed in the film. At first, Cindy Lou's family were like the other Whos, as they only cared about the materialistic side of Christmas and didn't really understand Cindy Lou's motives for trying to connect with the Grinch. However, when the Grinch stole all the Who's presents and the mayor tried to blame Cindy Lou for the Grinch's antics again, Cindy Lou's father Lou actually stood up for Cindy Lou, and I really applauded him for that. It showed that at that moment, Cindy Lou's family started to understand what Cindy Lou was trying to show them and the citizens of Whoville about the true meaning of Christmas. And it also showed that Cindy Lou's family was willing to do whatever it takes to protect Cindy Lou for being humiliated in town, even if it means going up against the mayor himself. The movie has many themes going on through it, which includes not judging a person by their appearances, bullying other people's wrong, and Christmas is not just about the presents or the money, it's about spending time with your family and friends. I like the fact that the movie portrays bullying in a negative light, as we get to see the bad side effects that bullying can have on people. In this case, because the Grinch was bullied relentlessly when he was a child, he grew to despise the Whos, and tries to do everything in his power to make the Whos miserable, even going as far as to steal their presents. I was a bit surprised that the most serious part of this film was the scene where we get a flashback to when the Grinch was being bullied by the Whos, as it shows how traumatic the experience was for him. I can only imagine how the audience started sympathizing with the Grinch during the scene, as everyone must have gone through a point in their lives when they were bullied and how the experience was traumatic for them. I also like the fact that the film tackled the theme of not judging a person based on their appearances. It shows that even though the Grinch has an ugly appearance and a nasty personality, deep down he is actually suffering from being lonely for so many years, and he just wanted to be loved by someone. In showcasing all of these themes, the movie allows the characters to develop throughout the film as both the Whos and the Grinch learn about the true meaning of Christmas. The Whos start off being as shallow and greedy characters who only cared about the materialistic side of Christmas. But when the Grinch stole all their presents, they start to realize that Christmas was never about the presents in the first place, and that it was all about being with your family and friends. The Grinch also learns a lesson in this film, as he learns that Christmas isn't as shallow or heartless as he led himself to believe in. He learns that Christmas is all about the joy it brings to people, and that he should let himself have feelings for other people despite him being alone all of these years. The special effects were probably the highlights of this film, as the film did win an Academy Award Oscar for Best Makeup, which I think was well deserved. I love the way that they designed the makeup for Jim Carrey, as Jim Carrey really does look like the Grinch, and the facial expressions he makes throughout the makeup really brings so much energy to the Grinch's character. I was also impressed with how Jim Carrey was able to hold up through all of that makeup, especially after discovering that Jim Carrey had to take torture lessons to deal with the heavy makeup on him. I also think that the special effects were quite ahead of its time, as the effects look quite realistic, even though we are in the wacky world of Whoville, whose designs defy all kinds of logic. Even though I found this film to be pretty enjoyable, I did have some problems with this film. You may have noticed that I spent over 90% of this review talking about how the Whos have mistreated the Grinch, and that's one of the main problems that I have with this film. I found the Who's to be pretty unlikable characters, as they seem to be selfish and don't really care about how their actions had affected the Grinch. That's the problem sometimes with trying to add more to the original source material. Even though sometimes adding more to the source material can give the material much more depth, it can also be a double-edged sword, as doing so could possibly villainize the character who wasn't the bad guy in the original source material if you're not too careful. Unfortunately, that's what happened to the Who's in this film, as they were made to be more unlikable in order to make the Grinch more sympathetic. There were times where I found it hard to sympathize with the Who's whenever the Grinch played mean tricks on them. I personally felt that they deserved some of the punishment that the Grinch delivers to them due to the way that they treated the Grinch. However, it seems that the mayor of Whoville is actually the main instigator of the Grinch being mistreated. It was revealed in the Grinch's backstory that the mayor was the one who bullied the Grinch when they were kids, and he still continues to mistreat the Grinch well into their adulthood. Okay, I get it. We were meant to hate the mayor throughout the movie, especially since he continues to act like a jerk throughout adulthood, as evident by how he blames Cindy Lou, a young child, for what the Grinch has been doing to the Who's, despite the fact that Cindy Lou is not responsible for the Grinch's actions. So, does it make me a sadist when I say that I actually enjoyed the scene where the Grinch goes on a rampage during the Who's Christmas celebration? Due to the fact that the mayor humiliates him by giving him a razor, which reminded the Grinch of the bullying that he suffered at the hands of the other Who children when he tried to shave off his beard to fit in? Well, if you hated the mayor at this point, then no. You're definitely not a sadist for enjoying this scene. By the way, the Grinch's rampage scene reminded me a lot of the prom scene from Carrie. Carrie was also outside of her high school, and one day she was invited to the high school prom. At first, Carrie was having a great time at the prom, even becoming the prom queen in the process. But then a couple of bullies pour pig's blood on her, and this causes Carrie to go on a psychic rampage where she killed almost all the students and the teachers at the prom. The Grinch also goes on a rampage after being humiliated by the Who's, except that he's not a psychic, and none of the Who's were killed. Although he did cause a lot of property damage. I can't help but feel like the people that worked on this film were inspired by Carrie in some kind of way when they were making this scene. Now, if you think that I only have a problem with the Who's, then don't worry. The Grinch himself is not getting out of this criticism either. Even though I found the Grinch to be a very hilarious character, there were times where I just couldn't take some of his more emotional scenes very seriously. The Grinch is supposed to be a victim of the Who's bullying, which causes him to resent the Who's. But the Grinch acts so hammy about the whole situation that it was hard to tell if he's really upset about being an outsider or he actually enjoys being alone. I know it's Jim Carrey being his usual energetic self in this role, but I would like it more if we saw the Grinch show some restraint in his emotions, so that way it'd be much easier to see just how much the bullying has affected him in a serious way. Another character that I had a problem with was Martha May herself. Martha May is shown as being the love interest to both the mayor and the Grinch. And according to the flashback, she was the only one among her classmates to actually care about the Grinch and was devastated when the other kids bullied the Grinch. This is actually good stuff. While it's great that Martha was one of the few Who's who actually cares about the Grinch, the movie didn't really do much with her. I always hate it when the movie introduces a love interest for the protagonist, but then the love interest is written in the way where they don't have much of a personality, and they are just there because the protagonist needs a love interest. While the idea of the Grinch having a love interest was interesting to me, Martha doesn't really have much of a personality in this film. All she does is spend most of the film making googly eyes toward the Grinch and barely saying anything of importance in the film. Also, I felt that we didn't have many moments between her and the Grinch that would convince me that they were a good pair for each other. Maybe have some scenes of Martha actually sneaking up to the mountains where the Grinch lives and try to talk to him would have convinced me that they are a good couple. It also would have been nice to have some more moments between Martha and Cindy Lou, as they were the only Who's who actually liked the Grinch. It would have been a great chance to see the two of them bond over how they felt about the Grinch's situation. In 2018, there is an animated adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas released by Illumination, the same company responsible for the Despicable Me movie series, called The Grinch. I haven't seen this movie yet as of this video, but whenever I get the chance to watch that adaptation, I would like to see if that movie is as good as the original 1960s animated special and see how it compares to the live-action adaptation. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is rated PG for some crude humor. There were a couple moments in this film that does indeed reach adult levels of raunchiness, such as two scenes where the Grinch insults the Who's but making crude gestures towards his behind. Overall, I give How the Grinch Stole Christmas a score of an 8 out of 10. There were a couple flaws in this film, mostly with the Who's being villainized in the story and the times where I couldn't take the Grinch seriously during his emotional moments. But this was a pretty decent adaptation of the original story, although nowhere near as beloved as the original 1960s cartoon. I love the fact that the movie actually gave us more depth to the Grinch's character by giving him a backstory about why he hated Christmas and the Who's. I also love the fact that Cindy Lou Who gets more importance in this film, as her relationship with the Grinch is one of the film's biggest highlights. The humor balanced out well with the drama, and I would definitely give this film a shot if you want to check out a live-action adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Well, that's it! I finally reviewed a live-action adaptation of Dr. Seuss's work, and it's the only one out there. There's absolutely no other live-action adaptation of Dr. Seuss's work that I need to review. Nothing at all! Wait, what? There's actually another live-action adaptation of Dr. Seuss's work? The Cat in the Hat? Ah, crud. Hope you enjoyed my review of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Also, if you want early access to movie and TV show reviews before I release them on Sunday, then please feel free to support me on Patreon. It's $3 per month for early access to my videos, and if you want to request a movie or TV show for me to review as a patron, then it's $5 per month. You will also get a shout out in my videos, and you will be featured on my Patrons Wall of Fame list at the end of each video.